I got my first home and planned a family barbecue. Nobody came. They were busy taking photos with my sister's brand new SUV. That evening, my lights stayed on, my phone flooded with calls from Dad and texts. I was the kid everyone called when something needed fixing, not when something worth celebrating happened. If the faucet started dripping, my number was the first one dialed. When my cousin's Xbox wouldn't power on, suddenly I was family again. But when I graduated trade school, not a single group text, just a lone thumbs up from my mom, the plain beige default one, like she couldn't even commit to picking a skin tone. I grew up in a house where achievements were judged on nothing more than a feeling, and mine never seemed to measure up. My sister Emily could sneeze near a piano and be praised as musically talented, while I built a shed at 15, wired it myself, and my dad's only remark was that I should have leveled the bass better. So yeah, I learned early not to expect applause. I was just the kid who fixed things quietly, cheaply, and reliably. And that's exactly how they saw me, like some backup generator they could kick on when the lights went out. But I wasn't bitter, not then, because I had a plan. While Emily was busy figuring herself out on Instagram, racking up likes for doing yoga and posing with rented cars, I was grinding double shifts at the warehouse, saving every penny, eating canned soup like it was a delicacy, and watching drywall repair tutorials on YouTube as if they were blockbuster movies. I didn't whine, didn't post, just kept working. Then came the duplex job, the one that changed everything. A guy down the block needed a full HVAC replacement. I didn't hesitate. Took it on solo, finished ahead of schedule, and word spread fast. Suddenly, I wasn't just the kid who fixed things anymore. I was Nate, the guy who knew his trade. 2 jobs turned into 4, 4 into 10, and before long, I checked my account and realized something crazy. I could buy a house. Not a mansion, not even a big 3-bedroom, but a solid place with a yard and walls I could patch myself. Something real. And I did it. At 26, I signed the papers with calloused hands and a grin nobody else saw, because I didn't tell anyone right away. I wanted to make it perfect first. I spent weeks painting every wall, swapping out light switches, fixing door hinges that squeaked like ghosts. My neighbor across the street, a retired vet with a beer belly and a basset hound named Kevin, gave me a thumbs up one day and said, "You're the real deal, kid." That meant more than anything my parents had said in years. Still, part of me hoped, maybe too much, that this would finally be the moment they saw me. Not as the spare tire or the handyman, but as someone worth showing up for. So I gave in. I sent a family group text. No emojis, no pleading. Just, "Hey, bought my first house. Barbecue this Saturday. Would love to see you all." Emily left me on read. My dad never answered. My mom just wrote, "That's nice." Emily's got big news too. I didn't bother asking what it was, because I already knew it would be loud, flashy, something financed, and staged for photos. But I refused to let that ruin my moment. I borrowed a smoker from Kevin, strung up lights in the backyard, set out a fold-up table with paper plates, and that red checkered tablecloth people only bring out when they're trying hard to look like a happy family. I even bought champagne, not the expensive kind, but something cold, bubbly, and loud when popped. To me, it tasted like finally. This was it. My house. My space. My celebration. And all I wanted was for them to show up. Just one of them. To sit in the plastic chair I'd scrubbed 3 times and say, "This is nice, Nate." But as the hours dragged on, the food sat untouched, and the music played to no one, I realized they weren't coming. By 1 o'clock, the smoker was working hard, smoke curling into the air, and if I closed my eyes, I could almost trick myself into believing people would come for the food, the warmth, the gathering. I'd gone the extra mile, checkered plates, plastic forks in mason jars, lemonade with real citrus slices, even a citronella candle, just because I knew my mom hated the smell. A part of me almost pictured her walking in, wrinkling her nose, and saying, "Trying a little hard, aren't we?" I would have taken that. I would have taken anything. But by 2 o'clock, the only guests buzzing around were wasps. No messages. No running late. Just silence. I refreshed the group text again and again. Nothing. So I cracked a soda, sat down in one of the lawn chairs I'd assembled myself, and waited. Kevin called across the street. "You throwing a party or feeding squirrels?" "Both," I yelled back. "Only one of them shows up." He chuckled and said, "Save me a plate." I nodded, but my stomach was already sinking. By 3, the brisket was done, tender, smoky, perfect. I set it all out, buns, toppings, sides, the whole spread. It looked like something from a summer cookout commercial, and no one was there to see it. I opened the champagne, not the good stuff, just the bottle I'd saved for when everyone arrived. And then I slipped. I opened Instagram. Emily had just posted, standing next to a gleaming white SUV with bows on the mirrors, sunglasses on, holding the key fob like she'd just won a prize. Caption, dreams come true. First ride in the beast. Thanks mom and dad. Hashtag SUV goals. The next photo cut deeper. My mom linked arm in arm with Emily. My dad crouched by the bumper, giving a big thumbs up. They looked thrilled, like they were at a wedding. That's where they were. Not too busy. Not caught up. They'd skipped my barbecue to smile for photos at a car dealership. They were never planning on coming. I stared at the post for a long time, scrolled through the comments full of heart emojis and congratulations. And all I could think about was how Emily had failed her real estate exam twice, how she once cried when a dealer offered her a basic loan package, and how she once told me my mechanic certification was worthless. Cute. I put the phone face down on the table. Didn't yell, didn't throw it. Just sat there staring at the spread I'd worked so hard on. Tried to eat something, but every bite tasted like cardboard, even the brisket, which was probably the best I'd ever made. The champagne went down thick, like glue sticking in my throat. I looked around at the backyard I'd dressed up. The string lights flicked on across the fence, soft and warm, almost like they were trying to make me feel better. I sat under them, listening to Aretha Franklin hum through a little Bluetooth speaker, wondering how I ever convinced myself they'd walk through that gate. I'd bought a house with my own hands, painted every wall, mowed the yard, wired the fixtures, cooked the food, set up the chairs, all for people who didn't bother to come. I sat there alone while Kevin barked at a squirrel across the street, my yard glowing like a movie set missing its cast. Eventually I stood up and went inside. That's when the phone buzzed. A message from my mom. Not an apology. Not a sorry we couldn't make it. Just a link to Emily's Instagram post, with one line beneath it. Isn't she stunning? Your sister deserves the best. I didn't reply. I just stared at the words, then at the dirty dishes piled in my sink, and I made myself one quiet promise. Next time they needed something, even just a light bulb changed, I'd be the one who didn't show. The next morning, I didn't rush to check my phone. Not because I was busy. I wasn't, but because I already knew what I wouldn't see. No apology. No we feel bad. No guilt dressed up in emojis. So I made coffee instead, black and bitter, the way my dad always claimed real men drank it, even though he snuck 2 sugars when nobody was watching. I stood in front of the fridge, still packed with untouched barbecue, ribs, burgers, soda, coleslaw, potato salad, enough to feed a family that never showed. Then I stepped outside to scrub the grill. Not because anyone asked, but because that's just what I do. I fix things, even when they don't get used. As I scraped away the burnt bits of yesterday's hope, I thought about every time I'd been their go-to fixer. The holiday when the sink backed up, I skipped work and drove 2 hours to fix it. The time Emily locked herself out during one of her self-care retreats, I was there. When the AC gave out last July and Dad called it life or death, I installed a new unit for free. He even called me the family hero, then ignored my texts for half a year. It was always like that. They needed me. I showed up, and then they moved on. But this time, I swore it was over. At least that's what I told myself until my phone started buzzing on the patio chair next to me. Once, then twice, then 4 more times. 6 missed calls, all from Dad. I stared at the screen like it belonged to a stranger, like the word Dad didn't fit anymore. Then a text, pick up. It's serious. No greeting, no hey son, just an order, like I was some delivery guy they forgot to tip. I didn't panic. I didn't even flinch. I set the phone on the table and kept hosing down the smoker. The meat drippings were stubborn, baked in, the same way I'd been swallowing down their treatment for years. 10 minutes later, another text. We need you to come by. Something happened. That was it. No explanation, no how are you, no mention of yesterday, just straight to business. Because to them, I wasn't the son who'd just bought a house. I was still the on-call technician. For free. I sat back in my chair and watched the wind scatter the party napkins I never got to use, thinking about all the times they leaned on me. Dad's truck battery died in the middle of winter. I jumped it. Their deck was collapsing. I rebuilt it and even stained it. Emily's ex slashed her tires. I changed them in the rain while she sat inside scrolling TikTok. They never said you didn't have to. It was always you should, because you can. But when I finally did something for myself, a house, a celebration, they left me alone with a smoker and silence. My stomach knotted as I opened Instagram again. Emily had posted another update, this time with balloons tied to the SUV. Caption, meet Bianca. She's got personality and horsepower. Hashtag spoiled. Hashtag queen life. Mom had commented, we're so proud of you, honey. You deserve the world. I stared at that word, deserve. Like Emily had earned her SUV just by existing, while I was the one patching every leak in this family, and the best I ever got was a sandwich. The phone buzzed again. Call number 7. I let it ring. Then number 8. Then nothing. Silence. I picked it up, not to answer, just to look at it. And for a moment, I hesitated. Because the old me, the fixer, the helper, he would have been in the truck already. But not this time. This time, I let the hesitation settle in. Then I typed one word, slow and steady, busy, and hit send. By Sunday afternoon, I figured maybe they'd gotten the message. The phone had been quiet ever since. No apology, no follow-up, no sorry we missed your big day. And honestly, I felt lighter than I thought I would. I cleaned the patio, tossed out half a tray of untouched sliders, and lit a cheap candle to cover the smell of burned expectations. That peace lasted until 6:43 p.m. when I heard tires crunching on the gravel outside. I walked to the window and peeked through the blinds. Of course it was them. Dad in the driver's seat looking like somebody owed him money. Mom riding shotgun, clutching something in her lap. Probably one of those tacky fruit baskets she brings when guilt gets the better of her. And Emily in the back, chewing gum, texting, sunglasses on like she was filming a promo. And there was the SUV. Bianca. Still shining. Still tied up with balloons like it was prom night. I didn't move. They rang the bell. Then rang it again. Then knocked. Hard, like it was urgent. I waited, not to make a point, but because I simply didn't feel like opening the door for people who skipped ribs and lemonade, but managed to find my house the second their precious showpiece was involved. Bianca had a scratch. That's what all this was about. Eventually, I opened the door, not because I wanted to, but so Kevin wouldn't think someone was trying to break in. Dad wasted no time. Why didn't you answer your phone? I did, I said. You texted. I replied. Mom stepped in, her voice tight. We need your help. It's Emily. Something happened. I looked at her, arms crossed, lips stuck out like she'd been asked to actually break a sweat. She finally glanced up from her phone. Some idiot at the car wash clipped Bianca's side mirror and just took off. Can you believe that? I blinked once. Okay, and they all stared at me like I'd missed the part where this became my job. Emily rolled her eyes. Can you just fix it already? I tilted my head. You drove all the way over here to ask me to buff out a scratch on a car you didn't even invite me to celebrate? Dad cut in. It's not a scratch. It's a gash. I sighed. Show me. I stepped outside, because I sure wasn't trusting Emily's definition of damage. She once called a loose bumper a flat tire. I circled the SUV and found the so-called gash. It was a scratch. Surface-level paint rub, nothing more. Probably brushed a post. Emily hovered behind me. So, can you fix it? I turned slowly. You know what would fix this? A basic detailing. Maybe $150. She groaned like I'd suggested surgery. But you could do it for free. Sure could, I said. But then I'd be enabling the same people who skipped my housewarming and posted balloon pictures instead. Mom stiffened. You never said it was that important. It was my first house, I said. Forgive me for thinking that counted for something. Dad crossed his arms. Are you going to help your sister or not? There it was. The line. This wasn't about fairness. It was about what they thought I was good for. I looked at each of them. Emily was already half turned away, confident the deal was done. Mom wore that fake smile she pulled out when she wanted to pretend we were some perfect holiday card family. And Dad? He looked irritated, like I was ruining his weekend. You know, I said, I used to believe helping meant you'd treat me like family. Emily snorted. You're being dramatic. Maybe, I said, but at least I'm not giving my car a name. She gasped. She's not just a car. Mom stepped closer. Nate, don't be petty. She's had a rough week. Yeah, I said. So have I. I headed back to the door. Dad tried again. Son, we're just asking for a little help. You've always been so reliable. I froze on that word. Reliable. The prettiest cage they ever built for me. I turned back. You're right. I am reliable. That's why I reliably smoked 3 racks of ribs yesterday. Bought champagne. Cleaned the house. Set a table. I held their eyes one by one. And guess who didn't show? Silence. So I smiled, calm and polite. You need a repair? Call a shop. You want free labor? Check Craigslist. But don't come here expecting me to keep being the guy who drops everything. Emily scoffed. So that's a no? That's a never again, I said. And I shut the door. They didn't knock again. They just stood there awkwardly on the porch like they'd forgotten what it felt like to be unwelcome. I stayed inside, leaning against the counter, watching them through the window as if they were strangers. Eventually, they left. Emily slammed Bianca's door so hard the balloons bounced. Mom gestured wildly, like she was narrating a soap opera. Dad drove off fast, probably already thinking about the next time he'd need me. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel sad. I felt untangled. The next day my phone buzzed. A text from Mom. Don't be like this. Emily is upset. Can we talk? An hour later, another. Your father says this isn't how family behaves. You're acting selfish. And then one more. We raised you better than this. I read that one twice. Better than this. They raised me to stay quiet. To nod and say it's fine. To fix, patch, carry, deliver. To do it all without expecting a thing back. They raised Emily to expect everything. They raised me to expect nothing. So no, they didn't raise me better. They raised me exhausted. By Wednesday, Emily texted, Hey, can you drive me to my lash appointment? Bianca's mirror is still scratched, and I don't want her seen like this. I stared at it. No apology. No explanation. Not even a please. Just entitlement. I didn't respond. 15 minutes later, another buzz. Hello? You literally live 10 minutes away. Still nothing. An hour later. I know you're not ignoring me. I know you saw this. This time I replied. Busy. She shot back instantly. Wow, you're such a child. And you know what? I didn't even get mad. Because I'd finally figured it out. She didn't want a brother. She wanted a free Uber with a toolbox. That weekend, I ran into Kevin while taking out the trash. He waved. You still cleaning up from that feast? Smelled incredible. I laughed. Most expensive dinner I've ever thrown for ghosts. He grinned. Still waiting for my invite. Next time, I said, only good people allowed. He raised an eyebrow. That family of yours never came, did they? Nope, I said. But their car did. Wait, what? Long story, I said, smiling. Too many balloons, not enough brains. Kevin cracked up. Classic. And for once, I didn't feel like explaining. I didn't feel embarrassed. Just free. Sunday night, another text came through. This one from Dad. Your mother's exhausted. Emily needs help moving furniture into her apartment. Come by. That same old tone, like a boss calling a late employee. I stared at it. No, please. No, would you mind? Just another unpaid shift at the job I never signed up for. I put my phone down, walked into the garage, and stared at my truck. The one I paid off myself, fixed with my own hands, and insured without anybody's help. I thought about how many times that same truck had been their moving van, their free ride, their grocery shuttle. How many weekends I'd burned hauling their messes because they didn't want to rent a truck or hire movers. I pulled my phone back out, typed 3 words, hire a mover, and hit send. Then I switched to do not disturb, slid in my earbuds, and went back to repainting the porch. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting to be needed. I was just living. Funny thing about silence, it feels like peace to the one holding it, but to the people who depend on your noise, it feels like chaos. By the end of that week, the messages slowed. Mom's guilt text stopped. Dad went quiet. Emily quit asking for rides. It felt like peace settling in, until the cracks started showing. Of course, Emily was the first. She posted a brunch selfie, holding a glass of cheap champagne with that practiced pout, captioned Self-Care Sunday. Don't need nobody. But right there in the corner of the frame, Bianca's mirror, still scratched, still taped. The comments poured in. Did your SUV get keyed? Girl, what happened to your ride? Fix that mirror. Poor Bianca deserves better. And then her reply. I would fix it, but some people are too petty to help. Some people. Imagine being reduced to a vague villain in someone else's pity script. I didn't respond. Just screenshotted it, dropped it into a new folder I'd started that week titled Proof I'm Not Crazy. Then the ripple effect started. Their thermostat went out, the same one I installed last summer. Dad used to call me every time it glitched, and I'd recalibrate it in minutes. This time he tried himself, managed to set the house to vacation mode, and shut off the AC completely during 90-degree heat. Melanie, my cousin, texted me midweek. Uncle Jeff is losing it. Literally. I can hear him screaming about smart gadgets ruining America. I asked if he'd called a tech. She said, nah, he figures you'll give in soon. He's just waiting you out. By Thursday, I had a voicemail from Mom. Her voice soft, shaky, the way she talked when she wanted something without sounding demanding. Hi honey, just checking in. We really could use your help. Something's wrong with the basement lights. Your dad tried to fix it. Now everything's flickering. Also, the ceiling fan won't turn on in the kitchen. I didn't even finish it. Delete. I wasn't angry. Just done. Friday came with another twist. Emily posted a voice rant on her story. One of those melodramatic ones where she thought she sounded empowered. Honestly, family can be so fake. People only support you when it benefits them. I'm not asking anymore. I'm reclaiming my energy. She added a crying emoji, a sparkle, and a poll. Have you ever been betrayed by your sibling? I voted no. That weekend, I ran into Kevin while putting in new porch lights. He pointed toward the yard. Getting ready for round 2? Just making things brighter, I said. He sipped his coffee. Your family ever make up for missing the first one? I shrugged. They showed up when something broke. He laughed. Sounds about right. My cousin only calls when her car dies. What did you do? I asked. Gave her a list of local tow trucks. He grinned. Noted. Sunday morning the Real test came. A call, not from them, but their landlord. The water heater blew, flooding half the hallway. Dad had tried the wrong valve, sprayed water everywhere for hours before someone shut it off. They called a plumber who quoted $500 just to show up. Guess who they didn't want to pay? So they handed the landlord my number, straight off a Christmas card I'd signed last year. Hi, Nathan, he said. Your folks tell me you're the family handyman. Think you'd be willing to stop by? I took a breath. Yeah, I used to be. Then I hung up. Later, Mom texted. We could really use your help. It's serious this time. That word, serious. It used to flip a switch in me. Now it just reminded me of all the times my milestones weren't serious enough. My housewarming, my effort, my time. Serious only meant something to them when they were uncomfortable. I set the phone down, turned on my new porch lights, and sat outside with a beer, legs stretched out, soaking in the hum of my own boundaries. That evening was golden. Freshly painted porch, new lights glowing warm, and marinated chicken sizzling on the grill, just for me. No guests, no expectations, just jazz on the speaker and a cold drink sweating in my hand. I'd barely turned the chicken when I heard it. That engine, that dramatic parking brake. Emily always pulled up like she was starring in a music video. Seconds later, 3 doors slammed, gravel crunched, then the doorbell rang. Not once, 3 times. Then knocking. I sighed, set the tongs down, and didn't move. They knocked again. Then Emily's voice, loud and whiny. Nate, 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 we know you're home. Your truck's right here, and we can smell the food. I stayed quiet. Dad's voice followed, sharp and impatient. Come on. Enough's enough. We just need a few minutes. And then Mom, sweet and sing-song, like that tone could erase everything. Honey, we've all made mistakes. Let's not be stubborn. Let's not be stubborn. They had no clue. After 5 minutes, long enough for my chicken to start sizzling and for Emily to whine about sweating through her lashes, I still hadn't moved. I opened the door, but only a crack, enough to look out without letting them in. Need something? I asked. Emily rolled her eyes, dripping with attitude. Obviously, she said, why are you acting like we're total strangers? I stared at her for a beat. You are, I told her. That landed like a slap. She gasped, hand flying to her chest. Dad stepped forward, jaw set, voice sharp. This has gone far enough, Nate. We're family. I nodded. Yeah, we are. Which is why, when I bought my first house, cleaned it top to bottom, fired up a smoker, set a table, and invited you. I assumed you'd come. Emily muttered. You're seriously still hung up on that? No, I said evenly. I'm not hung up. I just don't expect anything else from you anymore. They stood there awkwardly, like they expected me to swing the door wide open, welcome them in, pour them a drink. I didn't. Instead, I stepped outside, pulled the door shut behind me, and leaned against the porch railing. Bianca still scratched up? I asked Emily, casually. She turned her head away, lips pressed tight. Thermostat finally working again. I asked Dad. He grunted, shifted his weight, didn't answer. Basement lights still flickering? I asked Mom. She gave me that stiff little smile that meant yes, but she wasn't going to admit it. I nodded. Cool. Silence stretched out between us until Mom finally said it. We need you, Nate. Once Those words would have meant something. Maybe even felt good. Now all they stirred in me was pity. Not for myself, but for them, because they'd built a world where I was the backup plan, the fixer, the one they could always call when things broke. And now that I'd stopped showing up, they had no plan B. I know, I said, my voice calm. You always did. But the truth is, I don't need you back. Dad's brows knitted. What the hell does that mean? It means, I said slowly, choosing each word, this porch, this house, this peace, it's mine. And I'm not trading it for your emergencies, your guilt trips, or Emily's obsession with scratches and balloons. Emily snapped, you're being so dramatic. I smiled faintly. Says the girl who had a meltdown over a side mirror. She glared at me, lips tightening. We came here to make peace, Mom insisted, her tone syrupy, rehearsed. No, I said, shaking my head. You came here because something broke, and the guy who always fixed it stopped answering the phone. I pushed off the railing, moved back toward the door. Hope you figure it out, I said, but not here. Then I stepped inside and closed the door with finality. They didn't knock again. They just stood there for a moment, stunned, like they'd forgotten what it felt like to be unwelcome. 2 weeks went by. No texts, no calls, no knocking at all. Just silence, and I didn't mind. In fact, I thrived in it. I got more done in those 2 weeks than I had in months. Finished painting the porch. Hung new string lights across the backyard. Built a fire pit out of old brick. Cleaned out the garage until it looked like a new workspace. The silence was heavy, but in the best way. Louder, fuller, more meaningful than their constant chaos ever had been. And then, as always, life tossed me a twist. A message popped up from Melanie, my cousin. OMG, Nate, did you know your name's on the flyer for that community fundraiser next Saturday? I blinked, confused, until I remembered I'd agreed months ago to donate supplies for a charity cookout. Even covered the grill rental and told them they could use my place if needed. I hadn't thought much of it. Melanie sent a screenshot. Right there, printed at the bottom. Catered with support from Nate Ellis, Ellis Property Services. I chuckled out loud. The logo looked official. Kevin must have helped with that. Later he told me, after I fixed his fence and refused payment, he mentioned me to the committee. Said, that guy next door who throws barbecues nobody shows up to. Guess they remembered. Saturday rolled around, and I pulled up just as the crowd was forming. There was live music, tables loaded with ribs, sliders, corn, and beans. A big banner stretched across the entrance. Proudly sponsored by Ellis Property Services. My name in bold beneath it. I hadn't asked for credit, but I sure wasn't tearing it down either. Halfway through, I spotted them. Emily in heels wobbling in the grass, Dad stiff in a collared shirt, Mom scanning the crowd like she was searching for a lifeline. They hadn't seen the banner yet. I didn't approach. I just grabbed a plate, found a seat, and let the universe handle it. Sure enough, Emily's eyes locked on the sign. She squinted, read it twice. Mom gasped loud enough for me to hear. Dad's expression changed. First confusion, then recognition, then something else entirely. Emily finally turned, spotted me across the way, froze like she'd seen a ghost. I raised my glass in her direction, slow and steady. No smile, no wave, just acknowledgement. She dropped her gaze and turned away. They didn't stay long, didn't grab a plate, didn't say a word to me or to anyone else. By sunset they were gone, and I stayed until the very end. Neighbors stopped to compliment the food, ask about the work I did. I handed out a couple business cards I had printed. When things wrapped up, Kevin came by, clapped me on the back. Your family looked real surprised, he said, grinning. I nodded. They didn't know I do more than fix things. Kevin smirked. They do now. Later that night, my phone buzzed with a single message from Dad. We didn't know you were doing all that. I stared at it for a long minute, then typed back, you never asked, and hit send. After that, I shut the phone off, lit the fire pit in the backyard, and roasted a marshmallow alone under the new string lights. Not because I was lonely, but because for the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for them to show up.